It's a complicated system, and it's not designed to be easy. Basically, at the very root of it, they don't want to give away federal funds, state funds, and so they make it as complicated as possible for people to get a hold of those funds. However, those funds are earmarked for individuals to be able to get the housing that they need and get the support that they need. So I'm hoping that we can give you a bit of an overview today of how the system is set up and how to navigate it to get the supports that people need. Um, there we go. Okay. So 50% of renter households in Massachusetts can't afford a rent over $1,398 a month. I think that number is kind of indicative of our housing crisis right now. Wages are low, housing costs are really high. And so lots and lots of people are in need of some assistance, whether it's from the federal, whether it's from the state level, whether it's from nonprofit. And so there's a couple of main categories of housing when it comes to rental assistance. The first one is public housing. And so those are apartments or homes that are owned by your local housing authority. And if you qualify for those, we're going to go into all of these in more detail, but just overview. If you qualify for those, you'll usually pay about 30% of your income towards rent. There's also housing vouchers, which will help you pay rent for a private apartment. So it's not an apartment owned by the state, it's an apartment owned by usually a private landlord or a landlord company. And if you qualify for those, you also usually pay about 30% of your income towards rent. And then there's private affordable housing. So if it's a private landlord or a private developer, they might still have something that they call affordable housing that's at a lower rent, but it doesn't have to do with your income. It's just they offer it at a lower price than the quote unquote market rate. So generally, if you're applying for affordable housing, they figure out whether you're eligible with this thing called the AMI or the average median income, which basically is the average of how much everybody in your area makes. So that number changes over time. And so even if your income doesn't change, the area median income may change, so your eligibility may change. But when we say area median income, that means half the people in the area make more money than that, and half the people make less of that. And so your AMI depends on where you live because it depends on your area. It depends on how many people live with you. Usually, there's different median incomes for like a larger family or a smaller family, and your income before taxes is what's counted. Um, and then there's a map here of this is from 2023 of the median household income in Massachusetts. The darker color is areas that make more money, and the lighter color is areas that make less money. You can see that it definitely is a lot darker as you get a little further east, especially in that like Metro West corridor. And as you get further out west, we start to have lots less income. And so it's kind of a catch-22 when the average median income in an area is higher. That means if you're qual like if the that means that the threshold is higher for you to make too much to qualify for housing assistance. So if you live in a really rich area and you don't make very much money, you're gonna qualify for more money than if you live in a poorer area and you don't make very much money, because it's not based on how much money you make, it's based on how much the people around you are making. Kind of complicated. But does anyone have questions on average median income before we move forward?
No, I don't have any questions.
Perfect. So that's generally how eligibility is determined. If you are trying to figure out what you're eligible for, there are a couple different places you can reach out to. You can always reach out to Mass Western Region Self Advocacy. You can reach out to us at Stavros or at AdLib or at YA. All your local independent living centers can help you figure out what you're eligible for. There's also organizations like Wayfinders that can help you find out what you're eligible for. If you have a service coordinator or a case manager through DDS or Massability, they may be able to help you find something like that. And also, don't discount your local legislator. They have constituent services. So if you're not sure what you qualify for and you're not sure where to turn, you can always call your local legislator, and their constituent services should be able to point you in the right direction and hook you up with someone who knows what the story is in your area, because they're responsible for your area, so they'll know who serves you. So this is digging in a little bit. That first slide when we talked about the different kinds of housing, I just wanted to dig into it a little bit deeper. So public housing is state funded, and it's available for income eligible individuals, older adults, and people with disabilities across Massachusetts. And it's managed by local housing authorities, but there's a shared application. So there's like maybe there's one in Greenfield, there's one in Springfield. All of those are different housing authorities, but there's one application you do and you tell them, send it to this authority, send it to that authority. And so those state-funded public housing serves people making 80% of area media income or less. So if, for simplicity of numbers, let's say the average median income for your area is $100,000. If you make $80,000 or less, you qualify for public housing, and you're only going to pay about 30% of your income on that rent. And so um, public housing includes things like a public housing project. It can include vouchers here in Massachusetts, um, and it includes some places that have congregate and supportive housing. The other big category, you have public housing and you have the vouchers. So when you have a voucher, what you pay in rent is based on your income. So you'll usually pay about 30% of your income, but if your income changes, your rent will change too. So if you start making more money, you'll start paying more in rent. If you start making less money, you'll start paying less in rent. There's two main kinds of vouchers. There's project-based vouchers, which are assigned to a particular housing complex. So they'll say, oh, there's a space available in this housing complex, and you'll move in there. But there's also something called a mobile voucher, which moves with you. So that voucher is assigned to you, you decide where you want to live, and the voucher comes with you. There's two main programs in Massachusetts that are voucher-based. One of them is the Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program, MRVP, and that's for anyone making 80% or less of the area median income. There's also the Alternative Housing Voucher Program, AHVP, also just in the state of Massachusetts. So that's someone with a disability who's under 60 and makes 80% or less of the area median income. There's also, so those are both state programs. There's also the federal program, which is called Section 8. And so if you make 50% or less of Boston's area median income, no matter where you live in the state, that's what makes you eligible. So since it's federal, they don't care about the difference between Greenfield and Springfield and Boston. They just say Boston is the number. That's where we're going. Okay. So to apply for pretty much anything, you want to use CHAMP. CHAMP stands for the Common Housing Application for Mass Programs. And you can apply for MRVP through there, you can apply through AHVP. It's an online system. And basically what happens is you'll give them your information like how much money you make and where you live now and whether you have a disability and whether what kind of place you're looking for, how many bedrooms and where you'd be willing to live. Would you be willing to live in Springfield? Would you be willing to live in Greenfield? Would you be willing to live in Holyoke and Amherst? And you give them this list and they will handle the whole thing for you online, which is really, really helpful. Because back in the day, you used to have to go to Springfield and give them your application, and then go to Holyoke and give them your application. And so now you can just put it all in online and select yes, 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 I want to live in any of these places, and it will automatically send it to all of the housing authorities. The other great thing about it being online is, unfortunately, the waiting lists for a lot of this can be really, really long. We're seeing like 5-year waiting lists, 8-year waiting lists. I cringe to say more, but they're longer. And so if your situation changes, if your income changes, if your location changes, if your address changes where you receive mail, you can update it online on the CHAMP system, and that way it'll move with you. So you don't have to reapply, you don't have to do anything different. You just have to update it on the CHAMP website. And that way you can log in there to check the status of your applications. So it's all centralized into this CHAMP system. Um, I did want to break down, there's two big, so we've broken down like the kinds of assistance that's available. There's two big agencies that are administering these vouchers. So when you're sending in your applications, here's where they're going. So one place they could go is the Regional Administering Agency, or RAA. RAAs are nonprofit. They are funded through the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, or EOHLC, so they're funded through the state government. They distribute RAFT funds. RAFT is emergency housing assistance. So if, for example, you're behind on your rent payment and you got an eviction notice from your landlord, you can contact RAFT and they'll help you out. They also administer the state programs like MRVP and AHVP that we talked about before. If you are needing help with things like a security deposit, like you've got enough money for the apartment, but you don't have enough for the first and last month's rent. If you need moving cost help, get in touch with your RAA because they do raft, they do home base, they have lots of different programs that can help you get where you're going and give you a bit of extra boost to get there. And there's 9 RAAs across Massachusetts, so they're regional. The other place that your housing application might go is to the local housing authority. So they're not nonprofit. They're a public agency created by state law, and they're regional. There's many more of them than there are RAAs. So there's like the Greenfield Housing Authority and the Springfield Housing Authority and all these different places. And so they manage public housing units. So if someone lives in like Amherst Public Housing, that's the Amherst Housing Authority. They also administer Section 8, since that comes down through the feds. That goes straight to the local housing authority. Um, they're not part of the municipal government, which means that like the Amherst Housing Authority is separate from the government of the town of Amherst. So they're run by a board of commissioners and they're run through the state kind of separately from the town. Um, any questions before I move a little forward here on
No
anything else?
question.
All right. So one of the resources that I really wanted to highlight today is Housing Navigator Massachusetts. Housing Navigator Massachusetts, housingnavigator.org, housingnavigatormass.org. They're a nonprofit and they create listings. They're kind of like Zillow or Craigslist for low-income housing. So they have public housing on there. They have places that accept vouchers on there. They have, if there's a housing lottery to get a place, or there's a place that has, a short wait list. All of that is on Housing Navigator. If you go to their website, put in where you want to live, and it will bring up all the options. It'll tell you how many bedrooms are available. It'll tell you is it accessible? Does it have a ramp? So they're a really great resource to have because they're up to date. Also, if you're interested in pushing further into how this all works, Housing Navigator Massachusetts also does a lot of really cool data collection. So you can go to their website and you can download like, oh, how many affordable housing units were came up in my county last year. They'll have that information, which is really useful. Um, and you want to take a quick pause to talk about housing discrimination. So d there's a lot of protected classes, race, gender, sex, class, um, disability, gender presentation. We have lots and lots of protected classes, especially in the state of Massachusetts. And it is illegal to not rent to you because you fall into any of those protected classes. If it's a disability, if it's race, if it's gender, whatever it is illegal to not rent to you because of a protected class. So I pulled this just straight off from Massachusetts. Um, but I thought some of the language here was important, so I wanted to go over it. So it's not only is it illegal to refuse to rent you a place because of a disability or race or gender or sex, um, it's also illegal to say, oh, we don't have anything available, right? Not even if they don't outright refuse, they just say, oh, well, we don't have anything available. Still illegal. And the landlord is not allowed to ask you about some of these things. They're not allowed to ask whether you have a disability. They're not allowed to ask for medical records. And it's not the landlord's job to assess whether someone is capable of living independently. So if they're trying to do any of that, that's illegal. And they also, public housing has to provide reasonable accommodations based on need. Um, and so if you run into any of this, which is not uncommon, especially the other thing that they can't discriminate against you for is having a voucher. If a landlord says, "Oh, I don't take Section 8 vouchers," they need to comply with the law. If the place has a lot of landlords will say, "I don't want to do it because they don't want to get a state inspector in there." That's a giant warning flag that the place is not fitting Massachusetts habitable standards. Um, so if you are facing discrimination in your housing search, there's a couple places you should get in touch with. First couple that we think of are Community Legal Aid. Um, Disability Law Center does a lot of great work. And Mass Fair Housing is worth reaching out to also. Different states have different fair housing that's funded by the government. So Mass Fair Housing is a little overloaded at the moment because they handle all of the fair housing complaints for the state and they kind of have pressure coming at them from the top and the bottom. But they're definitely worth reaching out to because they will 100% know what are your rights, what should you do, where should you reach out next. And then if you want more information on any of this stuff, check out the mass.gov website, Housing Assistance for Massachusetts Residents. They will walk you through it. And also don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. Any questions about all of that that we just covered? I know it's a lot and it's kind of complicated before we move on.
Nope, I don't have any questions.
I'm all good.
Okay.
Sorry, I was a little tad late. I apologize.
No worries.
All right.
All right. All right. Who am I passing it back to?
Okay, so now we are over to Benji, right?
Yep.
I'll do your slides, Benji.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. So, as you probably know, um, there's a lot of problems going on, especially with housing. And um, y I'm lucky enough for my job to be to fight to make the systems better. So, I would love for you to join me. I run some groups and stuff that we work on um changing legislators' minds about like how much they should fund and making sure that they fund um stuff to make um housing affordable and accessible. And so it, you would be a good fit if you have a housing story, but even if you don't, it's a chance to make a meaningful impact for people around you. And so if you're interested, reach out to me at bkemper@youraccessadvocates.org or text Amber.
Or email me. Everybody here has my contact information. James, this is you.
Okay, if you have any ideas to improvements but need a place to start, contact Massachusetts West Region Self Advocacy. You can to see how you can help. Also, you can contact us to tell us your housing story
Can we go
and
to the
get them
next
on.
slide?
Oh,
Go ahead, Jim.
share your housing story. Hope you we hope to collect stories from fellow self-advocates about their housing situations to be related challenges. These stories will be collected and shared as a tool to advocate for the expansion of affordable housing, accessible housing, access, shared on social media and with local and state legislators.
And there's a code on there. You can sign up for that process. You can also reach out to me directly. Those are filmed video stories that folks will be sharing. And I know a couple of you who have, or at least one of you has already gone through that process. Lewis, I think that was you. And I'll, I just wanna mention that if you're not frequently at our event, and you want to keep up with what Western Region is doing, check out at our website. All of our stuff is there. There's also a code on the screen that you can scan that brings you to our little link tree that has access to everything we have going on. Um, this will be a monthly series of events that we're doing. Um, so check out those places to see what the next policy education series is going to be, and when it's going to be. I believe our next topic is going to be about insurance. If you have questions about insurance, come and check that out. We'll be announcing the date soon.
Thank you all for coming tonight. I know you are all busy.